Early on in my time as a naval officer, I had a few occasions where I was required to go before a qualification board. In these qualification boards, senior officers from my ship would ask me questions to determine whether or not I had the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience such that I could be entrusted with further responsibility. As I prepared for these boards, one of the best pieces of advice I received was to take their questions and answer them directly, succinctly, and then shut my mouth. The reason for this advice was that many junior officers would go into these boards and they would not just simply answer the question, but they would add on additional details that hadn't been requested in order to show just how much they knew. Inevitably, though, one of the quizzing officers would latch onto one of those excess details and go, "That sounds interesting. Tell me more about that." And what started as an effort to show how much the officer knew would suddenly turn into a situation where they were fumbling for words and actually showing how little they knew. Talking too much in this situation could get you into trouble very quickly. But haven't we all been there in other situations in life? Circumstances where we walk away going, man, if only I had kept my mouth shut. Or if only I hadn't said, fill in the blank. We've all been there, and we've learned this lesson the hard way. But what if I told you that the Bible actually warns us about this very thing? Proverbs 10:19 says that where words are many, transgression is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is prudent. It starts with presenting a scenario where it says words are many. Now, I don't think this is just simply saying that somebody's talking for a long time or has a lot to say. Rather, in the context, it seems to be talking about a situation where everything that needs to be said has been said, and then additional comments are made. More is said than needs to be said. There's not just enough words, there's too many words, if you will. And what it says is that when there are many words, transgression is not lacking. Or your translation may say that transgression is unavoidable or inevitable. The two go hand in hand together, it says. Where words are many, you're going to have trouble. When you say too much, when you say things that aren't necessary, transgression is right behind them. There's going to be problems when we don't watch what we say and we say too much. This is contrasted instead with a situation where somebody chooses to restrain their lips. That is, it's not so much about not talking at all as it is that everything that needs to be said has been said, and they hold back from saying anything else. Doesn't mean that they haven't thought of something that could be said. Oh, they may have something in mind that they could throw out there as well, but they choose not to. They hold back. And in so doing, the proverb says that the person who restrains their lips is prudent, or in your translation may say that they're wise. It's a different sort of scenario. The person who's wise or prudent is that person who restrains their lips, and the person who restrains their lips shows that they're a person who is prudent or wise. Now, if we were to summarize this succinctly, we might say it as more words bad, fewer words good. But again, this may be something of an oversimplification. We're not looking for a scenario where we say less and less to the point where we're actually silent. In fact, there are times where it's perfectly good to speak, to offer encouragement or praise, to offer wise counsel, to speak out against that which is wrong, or simply to have a good conversation. No, instead, again, this is looking at a situation where we don't want to say more than needs to be said. We want to hold back from offering comments that are unnecessary. So if we wanted to take advice from this, we might find it helpful to look at it in reverse and say, if you want to walk wisely, you'll avoid excess words because trouble follows when we talk too much. Now, I can think of a scenario that this kind of advice is very applicable to many today. Have you taken a look at Twitter or Facebook lately? There's a lot of things going on in our world and in our communities in the spring of 2020, and there's a lot that could be said about it. But if you spend any time on things like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, it doesn't take you long to get past things that are good and helpful and necessary to the comments that are just excessive, they're not polite, they start fights, and they're just not necessary, and trouble comes with them. At the same time, we also see situations where somebody has said something they didn't need to say or they shouldn't have said years prior on Twitter or Facebook, and now it comes back today to haunt them and to create trouble in the future from what was said in the present today. In some ways, I like to think of Proverbs 10:19 as my own personal social media policy. I'm not a man of few words, and if you get me talking, I am happy to keep going. But I realize that, like the proverb says, if I talk too much, it's going to create problems for me and for others. And so I like to look at things like Facebook and Twitter and ask myself, do I need to say this? Can I hold back? Or what do I need to say without saying too much? I want to be a wise person who restrains my lips when it comes to things like social media. You know, God has given us this great gift in the form of being able to communicate with one another. Our tongues are such powerful tools that can be used to build up or tear down. We don't want to be people who don't just say what needs to be said, but also add additional words that are just going to cause trouble. Instead, we want to be people who walk wisely, recognizing what needs to be said, and then restraining our lips and avoiding saying what doesn't need to be said, so that people are simply built up, but there is no excess of words to cause trouble and tear down.